Welcome. I'm Christine Lin, Creative Director of Friends of Falun Gong, or FOFG. FOFG is a US-based nonprofit working for the freedom of belief of Falun Gong practitioners who are currently being persecuted in China. I will be speaking today to Thierry Valle, President of the Coordination of Associations and Individuals for Freedom of Conscience, or CAP. He is the 2024 honoree of FOFG's Human Rights Award. The award was founded in 2018 to highlight the work of individuals and organizations who have been instrumental in raising awareness about the persecution of Falun Gong and bringing about its end. Falun Gong, also known as Falun Dafa, is a Chinese spiritual practice based on truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. With 5 gentle exercises, it has become popular across China and internationally since the 1990s. However, the Chinese Communist Party has been persecuting its practitioners since 1999. Many thousands of practitioners have died in police custody over the years. CAP Freedom of Conscience is a secular European NGO with United Nations Consultative Status. Created in 1995 and dedicated to protect the rights of freedom of belief and religion. CAP collects testimonies of discrimination that affects faith communities. Mr. Valle is often found presenting at the United Nations. He and his organization has been instrumental in championing the rights of Falun Gong practitioners. You can find out more at their website, freedomofconscience.eu. Thank you so much for taking this call today. It means a great deal to us to have such a great honoree this year, and I would love to learn more about your work and be able to share that with our audience. So let's start off by you introducing yourself and your organization and a little bit about how you got involved in this work.
So my name is, I'm the president of this NGO, called French-based NGO called CAP Freedom of Conscience, in French, CAP Liberté de Conscience. I'm the president of this NGO since 2016 and member of the NGO since 1995. So I started in France to fight for religious freedom in 1995, joining this organization. It was a newborn organization, and the first one dedicated to protect all kind of religion, new religion, old religion, new spiritual movement. And so I started doing some research for the organization, and time to time be involved more and more up to become the president in 2016. And now my organization is working at United Nations and EU Parliament, and we start to have like a real influence worldwide.
That's amazing. Now, what got you personally interested in the issue of religious freedom in the first place?
First place come from this, what we call in France, laïcité. This means that we have a separation in France between churches and state, which is basically good. But in fact, in the middle of the 90s, start in France a real out campaign against new religious movement and any kind of form of spirituality against Falun Gong coming from black propaganda from China and other movement. And so myself, I've been involved because homeschooling was also targeting by the state because they don't want that we share our common value, religious value to the kids. And so they targeted homeschooling. My kids, my wife was doing homeschooling and we started to have trouble. So I was looking for people working in this field, and I found this organization and started to work with them and be involved more and more for the organization.
That's very interesting. The relationship between governments in general and faith in general has always been a bit of a contentious one because I think it has to do with the hearts and minds of individuals. And for some reason, just speaking from the Chinese perspective, the state tends to feel threatened by people of faith. And religious persecution in China in particular is very, very intense, not just for Falun Gong, but also for Christians and Muslims and many other faith groups. And I wonder if you have any thoughts about the relationship between government and faith in general. Why do they feel
Uh,
threatened?
why? In fact, I don't know why, but it's an indicator. A real democracy don't fear of the people. You know, a real democracy can live with people from any faith or no faith. You can be a believer or non-believer. You can practice whatever you want, spirituality, religion. And a good democracy is trust on yourself. And so they can trust to people. But when the democracy start to be a totalitarianism, they start to be fear of people. And I guess it is not a why, but this is an indicator of where stand your democracy. When your democracy, so-called democracy, start to be fear of people because of their faith, of their spirituality. So you start to go in a way of totalitarianism.
Hmm. So, in a way, protecting the freedom of belief is protecting democracy and a more natural way of life in general.
Yes, because you know the French Enlightenment in the 17th century, Montesquieu said, you know, the problem of war of religion is not the diversity, is when one start to think they are better than the others. You know, the diversity of religion is the best way to keep democracy because by the diversity you have different opinion, you can help people in a different way. So the diversity is really the ground for the democracy. A democracy or any regime cannot be just one person equal to one other person, equal to another person, equal to another person. Only the diversity is a good well else of democracy.
That's such a good point. Now, let's bring it back to Falun Gong. So, if you run the clock back, remember how you first came across Falun Gong. Can you tell us that story about how you personally learned about this issue?
Okay, so as I told you, in 2001 in France, start in the media a campaign regarding Falun Gong member accused to be a cult in China. As my organization is taking care of a religious movement, we're starting to know why all of a sudden these people that we never heard before are evil person. And we find out that some anti-religious person inside the French government went to China. And when they're coming back from China, they bring with them from China all the propaganda, the black propaganda regarding Falun Gong. And they started to spread into the media that the Falun Gong people are evil, their practices are evil. So at that time, we have a meeting, we met the people from Falun Gong in France, and it's like this that starts the relationships, and we learn what's happened with organ harvesting. It was kind of, wow, my God, such crime. And the French media and the French politician is just about the black propaganda of China, CCPs. And we feel we don't have another way to try to say the truth regarding this ongoing genocide of Falun Gong people in China.
That's pretty amazing to know about because the infiltration of the Chinese Communist Party in Western governments and media is something that most people aren't aware of. So, what did you find out when you looked into it? Like, how were they able to infiltrate?
What we found out, the worst in the case in France at that time, it was that the infiltration came from some French person that goes to China and brings back all the propaganda against Falun Gong into the media without any verification, without any investigation, just taking what CCPs tell them to Falun Gong and they just spread it. It was not like an infiltration like Chinese agents coming to France and trying to influence media. It was the French government itself that was spreading into media CCP's propaganda against Falun Gong.
There must have been some economic and political interest involved for that to happen.
Yes, for sure. You know, you remember it was the beginning of the 2000 years, so it was opening of the China market. So everything to try to be good to the Chinese government was good at that time, and still is still working like this. But in these 2000 years, it was like all the Western economy tried to take place into the China market. So they were able to buy any black propaganda against anybody to try to be nice to the China CCP.
I see. Well, things have certainly changed since COVID. China is not as powerful in terms of its economy now. So hopefully things will also change on the human rights front. Now, speaking generally of more recent years in Europe, what trends do you see in terms of people's understandings of Chinese human rights and the work that you've done? What kind of trends have you seen in terms of people understanding the religious persecution side, and specifically in Europe?
As you said, COVID-19 look that changed something regarding the trend of our European and international institution as the United Nations look into human rights human rights in China, meaning that a few months ago, the European Parliament signed a resolution to condemn China and asking for the freedom of parents of Falun Gong members. Recently, the EU delegation went to China for to talk about economic and human rights and the rights issue of Uyghur Falun Gong members and other religious minorities. And they asked to China to fulfill its commitment to human rights and in particular religious freedom. So it's a real great change because for years and years, us, when I said us, is DAFO, ETAC, and many others NGOs like Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch. We were like advocacy for human rights in China, and the answer was like practical answer from Western government, making business first and human rights after. But now it's look like the trend start to change a little bit, which is already very good.
Yeah, I've noticed that too, and persistence really does pay off. It it's been 25 years since the persecution of Falun Gong started in 1999, and I can't imagine what it's like in China with these young kids who have known nothing else but their faith being persecuted. Imagine somebody who grew up with their parents practicing Falun Gong and their parents in jail or in and out of jail for many years and just growing up like that. That's all they've known, and that would be an adult at this point. And it just really pains me to know that that's a lot of people's reality. So thank you for your work. And also I wanted to point to the work of your colleagues and cohorts in the US who have pushed forward the Falun Gong Protection Act, which, as we're filming, yesterday passed the House. So this bill actually has some teeth to it, and it would sanction individuals who persecute Falun Gong or are involved in forced organ harvesting. It would revoke their visas and impose a fine. And I think there's jail time associated with it as well. So if this gets signed into law, this could really have a huge impact on the way the US treats this issue. And it is going to be the first legislation of its kind that talks about Falun Gong directly and exclusively. Now, tell me on the legislative side what it might look like on the EU side. And now we don't have a thing like the EU, but the EU is this huge organization, and for something to get passed in the EU would be a huge, huge impact.
Yes, so many things. First, the bill in the US is a huge, huge step because the point right now on organ harvesting, China is playing in a gray zone, meaning there is no legislation, international legislation that criminalize organ harvesting. That's a key point. Now, if the bill in the US pass, we start to criminalize organ harvesting. And that will be an example to follow to national country in Europe and after to European institution. And by US starting to leading the criminalized organ harvesting, Australia will follow soon, I guess. Taiwan started already, some city in Taiwan started to pass a bill to criminalize organ harvesting because for us, it will be a key point to put the perpetrators in accusation because it will be criminalized. Now is a gray zone that everybody is agree with, meaning the Western countries are very using this organ harvesting for themselves, hospital. But as soon we can criminalize, we can go to court to the perpetrators, both sides, meaning in China, also in Europe, because China it would be very difficult. It's like trying to put in court case Putin is almost impossible. But the one that in you are using this organ, they can be put in jail, they can be put in court, and that it will be a great point that everywhere in the world we can criminalize and we can do a campaign to point out the people that are using organ harvesting from China.
Yes, it's so true. And can you tell us a bit about how it's like to work with the UN on this issue? Like from what angle does the UN approach this, the persecution of Falun Gong?
uh, Approaching in a different way. You know, special rapporteurs on religious freedom already point out what's happened for the Falun Gong and the organ harvesting, but I don't know why, but you know, Uyghurs is a topic at the UN. Tibet is a topic at the UN. Some Christian persecution in China is a topic at the UN, but for a reason I cannot explain, ongoing genocide and a genocide on Falun Gong people is not really taking into account at the United Nations. Sometimes because it's too gross, or I don't know, it's because there is so many angles between trafficking, religious freedom, organ harvesting, all these kind of things. It's very hard to advocate for Falun Gong at the United Nations. During the last Universal Periodic Review of China a few months ago, I organized a side events. Few states came to listen to us. And you said the key word just before, persistence. This is a key point, is persistence. And now with the bills in the US, with the resolution at the EU Parliament and other countries like Australia seeking to criminalize organ harvesting, it will be more easy for us to continue on persistence to advocate at the United Nations.
Yeah, there is, and I've noticed it over the years, there's this thing that people will touch just about any other human rights issue in China, down to the dogs being eaten at, or like, little issues like that, and they'll be free to criticize a lot of these things. But when it comes to Falun Gong, it's it's the most sensitive topic for the CCP, and people know that. They can sense that because when it comes to that coverage, it's like immediately people just back off. And I think it's because it's pervasive. At the height of Falun Gong's spread, it was estimated that 1 out of every 13 people, including people in the Chinese Communist Party, were practicing it either casually or seriously. So it deeply affects the CCP's sense of security and its seat of power in a way that organized religion maybe does not. There's no church that you could corrupt because everybody practices in a very individualistic manner. You read the book, you do the meditation, and that's all it takes. You don't have to attend temple every week or anything like that. So in a way, I think Falun Gong, something that's loosely organized like Falun Gong is, may be more of a threat to the Chinese Communist Party than a traditional religion might be.
Yes, you may be right. As I said, diversity is a worse for CCPs. Diversity is a worse for totalitarianism regime, and people able to practice by themselves and to improve themselves without any hierarchy to tell those people how to think, how to vote, how to eat, and the other religion, Muslim, Catholic, have a kind of hierarchy, and Chinese CCP can deal with the Pope, for instance, or can deal with some Muslim authorities to control the people. But you cannot be controlled because you are yourself and you are independent and you are yourself, only yourself. You are not a guru, you are not a hierarchy, you are not a political regime, you are yourself. And totalitarians don't like
Yeah.
people be themselves.
Now, of all of the work that you've done and all of this time that you've been learning about authoritarian regimes such as China, what do you wish more people in the West understood about how things work in China?
Oh, no, they because they knows what's happened in China. I don't mean like the people in the streets, but our government knows. So what I wish they open their eyes and they stop to deny what's happened in China, whatever economical reason, business or political reason, just open their eyes and put human rights over than everything else. That will be my wish, that human rights come up than every other considerations. You know, I've been in France meeting business person dealing with China, and I try to involve them to say, look, what's happened in China? You maybe do some, you are able to do something. And their answer was, yes, but with business, human rights will come after. That was what Western countries think that, okay, that dealing with China, putting business in China, that after human rights will come. That's not true.
Hmm.
Because human rights is human dignity in business, in all of part of your life. If you don't have any human dignity, you cannot have business, you cannot have everything. So the first is that European government and my French government open their eyes that human rights should come first to any other consideration regarding China. And if they are really like, strong and say to China, okay, we're going to stop any business with you because human rights are the first things to do, things will change, I'm sure.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I think we spend our lives chasing the dollar over dignity, but after all of those dollars, you can't buy dignity with dollars, and the time is lost and the life is lost, and that's just something that ends up on your conscience. And I think it's really important for, like you said, the people in business and in government to really step it up and have the courage to do what they already know is right. And I think we're starting to see the tide turn on that. So I'm very grateful for your persistence and your courage, and to inspire the same in anybody who may be watching this or who is learning about the persecution for the first time. What are some things that you would suggest that people, just ordinary people who may be business owners, who may be employees, mothers, fathers, what can they do to help?
little things like if they see a Falun Gong people around them to talk, to sign petition, to be just aware, to spread the word around them. You know, it's like the climate change. As an individual, I cannot do anything, but you know, by just throwing the plastic in the plastic garbage and the food in the food garbage, you know, just by little things, things can happen. And my message to the people is to get back their dignity. And to get back their dignity is to look to human rights violations, because China is doing that with government. They close their eyes on human rights, but as soon as I do that, I lose my dignity. So how I can look at myself after? I can be active in my life, how I can share with other people if I start to losing my own dignity. So open your eyes to human rights, get back your own dignity, and spread the word. What is China? Don't be afraid. You know, organ harvesting is one of the most important crime in this 20th century, and nobody's talk on this. We are on Ukraine, we are on Russia, we are on what's happened in Israel and Palestine, which is rare, which is horrible. But this ongoing genocide of Falun Gong members for more than 25 years is under silence. Nobody is telling anything, and that should stop. So spread the words, just spread the words.
Yes, little actions add up to a lot if everybody does a little bit. And the thought that, all this time, the Chinese Communist Party has been infiltrating. They've been working very hard and very systematically to get their hands into every aspect of society. For us to still be desensitized at this point after COVID would be just a huge crime to ourselves, like you said, to our own sense of humanity. They've infiltrated the food supply. They're buying up agricultural land. They have corrupted local governments and international governments. They have hacked AI systems, infrastructure. They can probably turn off the power grid at any time if they wanted to. So any inch that we give the CCP is a mile that we take away from ourselves. So Falun Gong is one piece of the puzzle. It's one big piece of the puzzle. And I think it's important for people to understand how it all ties together, because when a meditation exercise that you've never heard of 25 years ago comes under attack, well, 25 years later, what you get is the CCP that says, hey, nobody's holding me accountable. I can do whatever I want. And they have. And so it's harder to roll that back than it is to prevent it. So like I've said before, it's very important to cut it, when it's small than it is to try to rein it in when the monster is out of control. So whatever people can do, I encourage you, tell somebody about this. Like Mr. Valle said, put in your little piece and let's all restore human dignity and freedom of faith together.
Thank you. No, you said so most important point. You said, what moved me is human dignity. Human rights is something, but in the preamble of human rights is a human dignity. And for 25 years, I said again, Falun Gong members have been deprived, denied of this human dignity. And now is that to climate change regarding Falun Gong is needed. And the crime against Falun Gong members should be known, and this history should be wrote, and the perpetrators should be accused and put in court and in jail, and the chain supply of the organ harvesting should be criminalized, and those done since more than 25 years as using the chain supply should be in jail too, because they forward this crime, and as you said, that give to China the impunity. They can do anything.
Yeah.
And that is, we are accountable for that. We let China to be what is China right now, and not China, CCP. If CCP is what it is right now, is because of us, of our silence. We are accountable for what is CCP right now, because we didn't stand with you when it started.
Yeah, we were complicit. All right. Is there anything else you would like to add as like a finishing thought to our interview?
Yes, some hope. As we said, US is in a way to pass a bill to criminalize organ harvesting. Australia is seeking off. Taiwan is moving on also. European Parliament is starting to pass some resolutions, and people are start to be aware of what's happened. So this move, since years, I've been working on the issue of Falun Gong. Is the first time since long time we have a such moving from international communities regarding the crime against Falun Gong members. So we have to continue. As you said, persistence is my word, persistence. I will be at the United Nations the 4th and 5th July for the UPR on China. And I will do a side event as I did a few months ago. So it's just a matter of persistence, be there and communicate. They cannot stop us to be there and communicate. So all of us, we can do that at our level, our spheres of influence, family, government, national institution, international institution. You just speak loud and speak in persistence.
Perfect. Beautiful. Thank you so much. Best of luck on all your journeys ahead, and God bless.